Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being out here tonight. My name's Lissa Muscatine. I'm one of the co-owners of Politics and Prose. And along with my husband and co-owner, Brad Graham, who is not here, unfortunately, and our great staff, we welcome you to tonight's panel discussion. And this is part of an ongoing series we've been doing here at PNP called Race in America. Before we get going, given that it is September 11th, I'm wondering if we could just take a brief moment of silence to commemorate the lives of those who died in the 9/11 attacks now 23 years ago. Thank you. Tonight's event promises to be insightful, illuminating, and an opportunity for all of us to better understand and talk about an issue as old and complex as our country. 55 days from now, American voters may very well, praise God, elect a woman of color, as president of the United States for the first time. Yes, just last night, Americans who watched the debate saw that woman, Vice President Kamala Harris, demonstrate how ready she is to lead our country. And we also saw her face off against an opponent who for years has relied on racism, sexism, xenophobia, and homophobia to shape his political persona and career. Simply put, in the context of the 2024 election, tonight's panel on race in America could not be more timely. And how honored we are to have three superb thinkers and writers to help expand our own thinking: April Ryan, Bakari Sellers, and Keith Boykin. But first, let me just tell you a little bit about how this series came into being. It's thanks entirely to April Ryan. In 2015, we launched the series when the country was reeling from a series of shootings of young Black men at the hands of police officers across the country. And at the time, April was a very well-known, very well-established and respected veteran Washington correspondent for American Urban Radio. And she asked if PNP might consider sponsoring a discussion about race for our community, and we readily agreed. April moderated the first event, and she's been our moderator. We were just trying to count up how many we've done. We think it's 8 or 9 since then. And she's brought together speakers like Susan Rice, Valerie Jarrett, Donna Brazil, Julian Bond, Mary Frances Berry, Eddie Glaude Jr., Paul Butler, Wes Lowry, Jason Riley, and more. And tonight she has assembled another all-star cast. April deserves all the credit for making this series possible and for doing so much to engage the broader community around politics in general and around the politics of race. She's covered the White House for nearly 3 decades, reporting on, I think, 5 presidential administrations, both for American Urban Radio and now for TheGrio. She's a commentator on MSNBC, and she's been a political analyst for CNN. She's also the author of 3 excellent books: The Presidency in Black and White, My Up-Close View of 3 Presidents; At My Mama's Knee, Mothers and Race in Black and White; and Under Fire, Reporting from the Front Lines of the Trump Presidency. By the way, she's also an entrepreneur. I didn't say that, but now I really want to say it. She and her husband have this, they make these amazing candles. And thank you. And we sell them here. So, you know, she's like this multi-talented person. So I had to give a plug to her candles. But I thought of April last night as I watched Kamala Harris on the debate stage against Donald Trump. And I marveled at how the vice president remained so composed and strong when Trump said demeaning things about her. Now, as a Black woman reporter covering the Trump White House, April was exposed to similarly childish, insulting, and derogatory comments from the then President of the United States. April never flinched or backed down. She's always been and always will be a model of courage, integrity, and grace under pressure. April, I think Kamala's learned something from you. So anyway, so we were just always in her corner and rooting for her, especially when she has adversaries like she has had. And now let me just tell you a little bit about our panelists. Bakari Sellers was the youngest Black person elected to office in the United States when, at age 22, he ran for and won a seat in the South Carolina House of Representatives in 2006. He served in the legislature for 8 years, ran for lieutenant governor in 2014. Very tough road as a Democrat in very red South Carolina. And he has also worked for the legendary Democratic Congressman James Clyburn and for former Atlanta Mayor Shirley Franklin. Today, he's an attorney, voting rights activist, political commentator, and author of 2 books, My Vanishing Country and The Moment, Thoughts on the Race Reckoning That Wasn't and How We Can Move Forward. We're also delighted to be joined by Keith Boykin, a nationally known television and film producer, political commentator, and attorney. As a White House aide to President Clinton, Keith brokered the first meeting ever between a sitting president and leaders of the LGBTQ community. In addition to his activism on behalf of civil rights and LGBTQ rights, Keith has co-hosted a television series, My Two Cents, on BET's J channel. He was an associate producer on the film Dirty Laundry and has taught at American University. He's written for numerous publications, the New York Times, Washington Post, Village Voice, to name a few. And he also has written books. One More River to Cross, Black and Gay in America, published in 1996, was followed by his New York Times bestseller, Beyond the Down Low, Sex, Lies, and Denial in Black America. And earlier this year, he was here to promote his newest book, Why Does Everything Have to Be About Race? 25 Arguments That Won't Go Away. We are so honored, privileged, and just happy to have these 3 with us tonight and all of you with us tonight. Please welcome April Ryan, Bakari Sellers, and Keith Boykin to Politics and Prose.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you for coming out.
Okay. I didn't mean the other end. Okay.
I am so, thank you, Lissa. Lissa Muscatine is everything for us. This is the place to have your book, okay? And for Lissa and Brad, her husband, to support this, it shows that they're very committed to the community. And we thank you. 8 or 9 times. And you forgot Bishop T.D. Jakes. Yeah. Yeah, remember he was here too. Yeah, he was. Yeah, and but we thank you because there are going to be more to come. But this is an amazing moment. The moment, Bakari.
Yes, ma'am.
This is an amazing moment in this nation. As Lissa said, we are poised to see history. We are poised to see history. Either way it goes, really. Right, yeah. I saw the cringe and the nods. But this is the moment. And Bakari wrote a book about the moment. I'm going to let you talk about it, but I want you to compare and contrast the moment that you talk about in your book with this moment. And Bakari has the ear of the vice president, so who knows? He's leaving early. He might be going to go see her.
No, I'm just minding my business and drinking water. No, I think that we are in a unique moment, but I think oftentimes we get caught up in what happens tomorrow instead of understanding what Keene called the fierce urgency of now. And so does the vice president and many others heartily push back against the notion of we can make history on November 5th because there's so many voters to register today. There's so many doors to knock on. There's so many people to try to win over. And the reason that philosophy is what it is not necessarily something I talked about in my book, but there is a level of, and Keith can definitely talk to this as well, but 2016, we had a bit of drape measuring and position selecting and what were you all white wearing to inaugurations, only to realize that we left work undone. And in 2016, all of us in this room, I would assume, thought that Hillary Clinton was going to be president of the United States. Hillary Clinton was the most qualified person to ever run for president of the United States, man or woman, period. I mean, that's literally an objective fact. And yet and still she wasn't elected. We don't want to go through that again. And I think that there is a cautious optimism with that. The moment that we're in, though, is one of choice. It's one of opportunity. It's one of divergent paths. It's one of something I do talk about in my book. It's one of passing of torch.
To the next generation.
To the next generation, yes. But it's turning the page and kind of washing ourselves or cleansing ourselves of what was, and unburdening ourselves and being prepared to grasp what can be. I think that there is a lot of hope in tomorrow, but there is a real understanding that danger lies ahead if we don't control our destiny today.
That's poignant. Keith, your book, Why Does Everything Have to Be About Race? Last night, it was all in my face. Number one, and it was strategic because when you see Kamala Harris, the first thing you see is her gender. Well, maybe her race first and then her gender. She didn't have to say it because it's obvious. And she doesn't exploit it. She's like Barack Obama, leaves it alone because it's right there. Let's deal with the issues. Then how he disrespected her by not saying her name, she, her, that was disrespect. Would not look at her. And then also what infuriated me as a Black woman who has dealt with his ire, as Lissa said, when he told her, I'm speaking.
Does that sound familiar?
Yes, does that sound familiar? Twice. That bothered me. And there are other things. Do you believe that race played a part last night? I like that.
Well, race is an ever-present issue in America, even if we don't talk about it, as you mentioned. And it's clear. I don't think that she had to talk about it, but it came up, and it came up in the context of the Haitian immigrants lie that Donald Trump told, which I just couldn't believe he actually said that.
And J.D. Vance doubled down on it in the spin room last night.
Unbelievable. And it does make me question who are these people who can support this type of evil. And then it came up in the context of a question I think David Muir asked about Trump making a comment at the NABJ that Kamala Harris turned Black recently. And, he didn't have to respond to it in the way that he did, but he chose to repeat the allegation again, showing once again that he has no message.
She can be whatever she wants to be.
Yeah, it was offensive on so many levels. But, I have to say this, and this is something that, stepping back to sort of say these things in a different context. I've been doing Abby Phillips' show on CNN lately, which I really enjoy doing because you get a whole hour to talk and you can talk about whatever you want. And every time I go on there, I get in trouble. There's always some controversy. And so I told them, please don't identify me as a Democratic strategist anymore, because there's always a story in the news the next day. Democratic strategist says something, whatever, which is, I don't represent the Democratic Party. I'm not there to give you the Democratic talking points. I'm telling you what I believe. And part of what I believe is that I think the Democratic Party is the best party to advance the agenda that I support as a Black man. But I also know the Democratic Party doesn't support, the Democratic Party leaders do not support all the things that I support, nor do I expect them to. And I don't necessarily fault them for that, because you still have to get elected to be president of the United States. And if Kamala Harris said all the things that I believe in on TV last night, she would never even have a chance to be president of the United States. So people have to have some sort of sense of perspective when we talk about what we really want from our candidates and what we want them to do. I go back to another example. I'm going to get off track for just a second, but I go back to another example back in 2000. When was it that Barack Obama? 2008, when Barack Obama ran the first time, and he was opposed to gay marriage. Even though I went to law school with Barack Obama, and he had been supportive of LGBTQ equality and gay marriage in the past, and everybody knew that he supported it, but he just knew he couldn't say it. But I don't think anybody really faulted him for that. We just knew, okay, you can't say that because we don't want you to get in trouble and not get elected. Why aren't people that smart anymore? I mean, clearly there are some things Kamala Harris supports that she can't say that she supports, but I don't even want to say that now, because somebody's going to say, "Oh, Democratic strategy says Kamala Harris is hiding what she supports."
It's like you're not helping.
I know, exactly. Exactly. No, but I mean, I'm really speaking to African Americans who are on the so-called left, who are saying, "Oh, she's not doing enough. She doesn't have a Black agenda. She doesn't support. She won't say anything that's Black specific." Are you not paying attention to what's going on in America today?
But last night, I was very interested in her words when she was talking about this conflict in Israel.
Yes.
The Israel-Hamas conflict. And she really she said she was stronger than I've ever heard from someone in this administration on Palestinians. And I say that because many African Americans, this is not myth, this is not conjecture, this is fact. Many African Americans see themselves in that light because we've had our land, our hopes and dreams, our freedoms taken away from us.
Right.
And so you say, and still, that's right. Because right now we're dealing with the lack of gender and racial freedoms. We're now voting without the full protections of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And Bakari's daddy marched with those civil rights lieutenants of the 50s and 60s. And we're going to get into that in a minute. The compare and contrast of yesterday to today, right? If you close one eye and turn your head and it's a sepia tone picture, you would think, what? You know, it's 1955 or before. But getting back to that, there were some strong statements, and you're absolutely right. But here's the thing, as there is momentum for these candidates, and you're all excited and buying all the hotel rooms up because you can't find a hotel room, and that's right, in January, as you're all I'm serious, January 20th, everything's gone. Go to Columbia, Maryland or something. But here's the thing, as you're so excited, you have to remember, yes, this is history, but you still have to hold them to account. And people were kind of on the fence with that with Barack Obama. You still have to hold them to account. And Bakari, talk to me about that. I'm going to go to that piece and Lyndon Baines Johnson and King when he told them, make me do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big question because you started with Israel and Palestine and you ended up in 1964.
Child, I can take you everywhere. I can take you around the world if you want. We can go to Italy too.
I'm supposed to just chime in on this answer. I think that the answer, first of all, the answer to the question she gave last night was something that it was powerful, but the powerful is not the correct word. It was nuanced. And a lot of times when we're talking about the conflict in Israel and Palestine, people do so without nuance, or they attempt to get it out in 140 characters on Twitter, or there is a certain level. I mean, and she did it last night appropriately, and started from a point where she centered what happened on October 7th and gave some level of empathy to that horrible tragedy that we all witnessed, but also gave out of the same spoon that level of empathy to Palestinian men, women, and children who are innocently dying. And so I thought that level of nuance is something that people oftentimes don't necessarily have. And I thought she centered it appropriately and moved throughout that question appropriately. And at the end of the day, to say that she is not, that there will be any space between her and Israel, and she literally sleeps with a Jewish man, or to say that she, that Gaza will be blown up, it just showed a difference in the level of nuance and careful, thought out policy between one candidate and the other, which is what the goal was last night, to show just a steady hand versus whatever else that was on stage. And so that was first. I mean, in terms of accountability, though, I think that accountability is something that we don't do quite well. And the reason we don't do accountability well is because we have very few swings of the bat. It's, LBJ was unique. Usually there is this picture, and Stokely's in the room, and my dad is in the room, and
Stokely Carmichael,
and they're sitting, and these people know who Stokely is.
I'm just throwing the names out. He's dropping. I'm just making sure. I'm reinforcing.
Right down the street.
I'm just reinforcing.
They know. And so, and yeah, there was a healthy appetite of fear. There was a healthy appetite of what are these Negroes gonna do, But the difference between then and now is that the issues that we face today, it's a greater plethora thereof. The way in which we communicate is vastly different now. You didn't have the way to exert pressure via social media and Twitter and TikTok and Snapchat. Barack Obama, 44, always talks about the unique way that you can mobilize people with your phone now.
He did it directly to the American people.
And it's just,
Yeah.
it's different. I think that LBJ does, I don't give him a whole hell of a lot of credit, but he does get credit for even allowing those people in his space in that room at that time, because of the simple fact that that was a step that was made out of fear, which of course is self-awareness, because he literally did not know what SNCC and SCLC and CORE, and to a lesser extent the NAACP, were going to do. And it is a totally different time now than it was then. And attempting to, somewhat to Keith's point, to mobilize, to have that level of unity, to have that level of message, because all of them went in there asking for the same thing. The problem is, if I were to tell all of you all right now that we're going to go in and we're going to talk to Kamala Harris about what we want on her agenda, the problem is it's going to be 137 different things that all of y'all list as your top priority. Now, is that a issue? No. It just means that we probably need to meet, collaborate, streamline, rank, have one person speak.
Ice Cube is going to tell us what it is.
Yeah, that's your guy. Ice Cube, Stephen A. Smith. So, for me, I just think that what I'm attempting to say is that the times are different now. And these different times mean that we have to have a different type of leader. And we have to have a different type of leader with a different type of worldview. And the problem with the Democratic Party is that the Democratic Party and its leadership are just simply too old and not nimble enough to be leaders during the time that is required today.
Keith?
I don't have anything to add to that, really. I think Bakari's right. I would just add that we're in a place right now where we can still hold our leaders accountable, but it's very difficult to do certain things in the context of a presidential election because you still have to get those 270 electoral votes.
Correct.
And so what happens is that we focus all our attention on that one moment every 4 years, and we don't pay attention during the other 3.5 years when we should be trying to use our influence. I remember when Obama was president, I was very critical of Obama on his drone policy. I didn't agree with his grand bargain idea with Republicans. I publicly disagreed with his position on on gay marriage until he changed, even though I knew he was going to change. I disagreed with him on a lot of things, including the health care proposal. I wanted to have a public option in his health care proposal. And I had no problem saying that I disagree with him and still voting for him proudly in both elections. And I don't understand why we can't do, going back to what Bakari was saying, nuance. Yeah, you can still criticize someone. I criticized Joe Biden. I wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post criticizing his failure to exert leadership on the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And I still supported him, still voted for him, because I think people need to get pressured from the people who are part of their community and part of their corner. So we can't just be the amen corner saying yes to everything the president or the vice president or anyone does. But we still have to have their back when they need it. So it's a nuanced effort that we need to work on doing more.
So what they're saying is two things can mutually exist in the same place. I want to see her there, but yet I need her to do what I need her to do. And I'm going to support her, but I still need to help her get there. Okay. So at this time, and Bakari has to run in a little bit, he's got to go to some ubiquitously clandestine place very soon. But I want you. Did you see that smirk? My poor friend is tired.
I am exhausted.
He has been working so hard covering this political moment, this history. But if you have any questions, please come to the mic. And I want to give Bakari, I want you guys to talk to Bakari as much as you can before he leaves in the next few minutes. So if you have any questions, go to the mic, please. Don't be shamed. Don't be shy. Just come on. This is family. Come on to the mic. And I know. Yeah, come on, Martha's Vineyard. Come on, Inkwell. All right. So, yes, I know there are a couple of people here. I also want to say, Courtney Nobles, raise your hand. She's from Amistad and HarperCollins. She works with Bakari and April Ryan on our books. We thank you very much. And yes, ma'am. Your name?
Tiffany Johnson.
You look beautiful tonight.
Always, yes, for sure.
I'm coming to ask you all a question. Obviously, we care about getting Kamala elected and becoming president. But I want to talk about the real challenge that is the Senate and Congress and where we can make inroads and strides there, because I think that that's one of the challenges that I see, even if she is elected.
No, the Senate is a real challenge because the Senate is gone for all intents and purposes. Montana, this was a terrible map for Democrats to maintain the Senate. It just was. I mean, you get every 2 years, you get a different landscape. And we just drew this landscape at this time, and it was just god awful because you were defending places like Montana, which Trump wins by 30. You're defending West Virginia, and Manchin retires. So you're already down 1. So you don't have any slippage.
But was Manchin really?
Yes.
He voted to impeach Trump.
Yeah.
That part, but he voted against
Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, but when it came down
Judges.
but when it came down to policing, voting rights, and all that stuff, come on.
I mean, okay, so he didn't give you 2 of your major issues. He gave you the other 8. I'd rather be in the majority than a minority any day.
But we are
of the
now
week.
in the post-affirmative action era too. And that doesn't help us.
Yeah,
We've
no.
lost. When you lose ground in this nation, it's hard to gain it back.
Well, that's also true. But I mean, I would take Manchin over not having Manchin. But I'm not a Manchin or Sinema fan. But again, to your point, I'd rather have them under our tent than not. So you lose Manchin, and in all likelihood, you're going to lose Tester. You're going to keep Sherrod Brown in Ohio, which is a hard-fought race, but it's going to be nip and tuck, and you'll probably keep him. That means you have to do something that is just weird and ahistorical and unprecedented, which is not likely going to happen, although y'all are going to spend a lot of money down there and donate money, which you probably should call in Allred and Florida. I can't remember her name in Florida. Debbie Murkowski. Yeah, Powell. Those races are extremely difficult to win. The ground is not fertile enough. Florida is actually going to be closer than it should be just because Rick Scott is not just a good human being. And Ted Cruz is not a good human being, but it is Texas. And so I say all that to say that the Senate is in all likelihood a 52-48 Senate.
What about Maryland? Let's talk about Maryland.
Oh, Maryland's done.
Angela also. Are you sure?
Positive.
Okay.
I mean, Kamala Harris is winning. Kamala Harris is winning Maryland by 32 points. But
I'm talking about Angela also, Brooks.
My only point is that you cannot show a point in most states the size of Maryland. A point is worth 30,000 votes. So 32 points is a million votes. That means that there have to be 1 million people that come in the booth and vote for Kamala Harris and go home, or there have to be some share of which are split ticket. That is just not a thing.
But down ballot for the state of Maryland, for the Senate, you have the former governor, Larry Hogan, versus Angela Alsobrooks. What do you see there?
That's what I'm saying.
I'm just
saying, but I mean, if Kamala Harris wins by 32 points in Maryland over Donald Trump, Angela Alsobrooks wins by
but Maryland,
10 on a bad day.
But I think everyone is having a problem with down ballot. They look at this and then run away.
But 1 million plus people have to look at that and run away.
There are a lot of people that run away, and that's why there's such. But there are a lot of people who run away, and that's why there is such a call to go down ballot.
Well, I think that the blessing to your Senate question, and I'll turn it over to you. The blessing to your Senate question is that you're going to have 2 African American female senators for the first time together in the United States Senate. You're going to have Angela Alsobrooks, and you're going to have Lisa Blunt Rochester.
That's going to be huge, and that's Delaware. That's Delaware. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you here because I feel like on the one hand I agree with what Bakari was saying about Maryland is in the bag, but on the other hand I'm a little leery of saying that because I don't want people to think that they don't have to do the work.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, go vote now. I mean, I was just analyzing the race, but yeah, y'all got to show up.
So then the other thing I just want to say is a structural point, which is that we have a huge problem with the United States Senate in itself. The Senate is completely unrepresentative. And I said this when I was here last time I got in trouble back in February, whatever it was, January. I said,
you're amongst friends.
We need to abolish the Senate. And I know, don't say this is a Democratic strategist. This is Keith Boykin as a personal person saying this. But, the Senate is unrepresentative. I live in California. We have 39 million people in my state. We get 2 U.S. senators. North and South Dakota combined have 1.5 million people, and they have 4 U.S. senators. And it's a mostly white rural community there. We are one of the most racially diverse states in the country. We are not represented appropriately. People in South Dakota have 50 times more influence in the United States Senate than we do in the state of California. That needs to change. And the only way to change it, unfortunately, according to the Constitution, is to abolish the Senate, because the Senate.
What's your other idea?
I'm just saying. But I'm saying, no, the reason why I'm saying this is because I know we can also add senators in D.C. and Puerto Rico and things like that. And there's all sort of incremental steps we can get to some of the solutions that we want to do. But I think it's important to throw out some of these things. I know there are questions out there. I think it's important to throw out some of these big, bold ideas so that people know that we have these structural impediments that are preventing us being able to accomplish some of the things we want to do.
But I think you're right.
And some of us over here don't think that y'all need more than 2 senators in California.
Oh!
What?
I'm in California originally, so.
I mean, my point. Make my point. No.
We have 39 million people.
We have the finances, right, in the nation. We have the, 5th largest GDP in the country.
In the world.
In the world, yeah.
And so we should have more.
Okay. We're
We
not
shouldn't
going
have the same number that North Dakota does, that's for sure.
No, South Carolina need our 2, and y'all can keep y'all 2.
But this goes to the point. We are antiquated. We have aged out of everything.
Yeah.
And yes, in the electoral, I have never seen the loser win. This many
Twice in
yes.
the past, in this century.
I remember Al Gore. I remember Al
I am
Gore.
somebody who does not believe in abolishing the Electoral College. Why?
Oh boy.
Oh, the answer is quite simple. Because if you abolish the Electoral College, then people will only campaign in urban centers because that's where the population is. And so those of us who live in rural America, how would our voice ever get heard when all you have to do is go to New York City or San Francisco or LA, or you just bathe in the sun in California when there are when there are rural issues that need your attention and rural issues that need your concern. I mean, why would you pay attention to them if all you need to do is win the popular vote?
Listen,
Well,
says
that's
do it regionally instead of state by state.
there may be something in the middle.
Yeah.
I think this qualifies for a congressional hearing right here.
Right.
Another
Hello.
Martha's Vineyarder, yes.
My name's Morgan. And my question, I feel like as someone who grew up in DC, we kind of naturally get exposed to a lot of politics. But I feel like when I'm talking to my friends, like I went to undergrad in Iowa, I went to grad school in West Virginia, and they are not as informed, they are not as involved. And I'm often wondering, like, how you talked about the Democratic Party being very old. I do feel that. And I'm wondering, like, how do we get more people engaged and involved and participating?
I think
in this
one
process?
thing, I think we need to start talking to people in layman's terms. A lot of people don't get involved because it's so cerebral. And just listening here, it's broken down instead of going, thus thou art, wherefore thereas. That is so intimidating. And you want to know what impacts you. I don't need to know about how high the level of water is and the toxicity. Just tell me it's not safe to drink and don't drink it. And that's part of the problem. We are going around the mulberry bush instead of going straight on. And people need to understand more so. And I think people would be more engaged if we talk with them instead of at them. And that's one of the things I know that I try to do when I try to deliver news. And I think that's one thing we have missed. Bakari, because I know you got to roll.
No, I'm going to leave out the answer to this question. I think, honestly, I think we talk too much. I think a lot of times we get these degrees and we have these ideas and we come in places like this and then we want to talk to people instead of listening to them. I had a woman DM me the other day, and this morning actually, and she was telling me that her son, it was a black woman, she was telling me that her son was 18 or 19 years old and wanted to vote for Trump. And, you know, instead of like asking why, she was just telling him every reason why it wasn't good. Mm-hmm. And I was like, sometimes you just have to sit down and like listen to folk and understand where they come from and understand their position and understand why they think that way. And then you can properly address it. Sometimes people feel as if their needs aren't being met and they just don't know, right? There is a level of entitlement that comes along in politics. And for those of us who have been in politics, and I have to remind people, like, I turn 40 next week, but I'm also, thank you. I'm also 20 years away from when I won my first election. Like I've been doing this for a very long period of time. And when we do this for a long period of time, sometimes we forget that we have to do the things that are necessary in politics, which are 1, listen to people, and 2, meet people where they are.
Yes.
A lot of times we expect people, we're like, yeah, you went, first of all, God bless you for going to college in Iowa and West Virginia. I don't know. I'm glad you made it out or through. Welcome back, I guess.
I was a little bit progressive, though. I hear it's progressive in the college towns. Oh, not really?
It's still 90% white in
Yeah.
the state.
But I mean, I just think that we have to do a better job of going to these places where the individuals reside, that you want to be a part of the process, listening to what they're saying, and then not pushing them away, engaging them in their space, in their level of comfortability. And then as the conversation goes on, make them a little bit more uncomfortable, challenge them to think about this. And it takes time. And the problem with white progressives in particular and older Black elected leadership is they expect you to be able to do this like from Labor Day to Election Day. And it actually takes time. It took Stacey Abrams 8 years and $100 million to make Georgia purple, not blue, purple. And so it takes time, and that would be my advice. I'm going to slide out. I love all of you all, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. And the crazy
And
thing,
thank you so much.
And the crazy thing, Stacey Abrams told them what she was going to do, and then she did it quietly and kept moving and made a change. Thank you, Bakari.
Thank you.
Love you more. I will tell him you said hello. All right. Yes, sir.
I don't want to get too granular, but there's 6 House seats in upstate New York that are going to decide control of the U.S. House of Representatives.
Up. Bye, Bakari.
I don't think so. 6 House seats in upstate New York that
Come
are up
close
for
to Mike.
grabs will decide control of the House of Representatives. And what more? You couldn't have more fun than spending an autumn in upstate New York.
Yeah. So I think I guess the point that you're making is that we have to be engaged in all these races, up and down the ballot, and you can't just focus on the top of the ticket. You have to focus on the local races, and we also have to focus on the fact that there are red people, if I can use that phrase, in blue states and blue people in red states that none of these states are monolithic. There are Republicans in California and New York, and there are Democrats in Texas and Georgia and Alabama. So I think the Democratic Party also needs to have a 50-state strategy. I know that's something that they always talk about, but there are races where there are no candidates running. There are candidates who are running unopposed. Republicans are running unopposed because there's no Democratic candidate they've been able to recruit to run against them. And it's a very red district, but you don't have a chance if you don't even get in the game. What's the lottery phrase? You can't win if you don't play?
I don't play, so.
Okay. You can't win.
I know. But I did go to the casino the other day on my birthday, but that's another story. So going, yes, next.
Hi, I'm Tyler Taylor, and my question is in regards to some of the criticism that Kamala Harris has received as her presence of being the vice president. I will say this, I do feel like she was propositioned. There was a lot of muscle behind the first Black vice president, the first female Black president, and I do feel like there's been a certain level of absence. I don't know if she's been silenced or she's been silent, but I would love to know, what's your perspective on, and maybe it's just I don't understand what the vice president role is, and I think that that's been a big part of it, that especially the African American community, we feel like we haven't seen her in the forefront in the way that it was pushed to us. So I would just love to know your perspective on that rationale or that commentary.
So we remember Biden and Obama.
Mm-hmm.
They were like this. President Biden, and that was so interesting last night when Trump said, he hates her, he can't stand her. I was like, did you guys... He doesn't. He loves her. He literally, they worked together to make this happen. And it was something for the president to walk away from another term, but anoint her, take her out into the white hinterlands, if you will, to say, I need you to understand this is who I am supporting. Now, let me tell you, every vice president gets a portfolio. But for this vice president, she had a unique challenge, very unique challenge. And I'm going to say some things that I've never said publicly, but I'm going to say it today.
I know what you're going to say, too.
Get into it. We want to hear it.
You want the tea?
I want the tea.
All right. Okay, I know we're on camera. I don't have a problem with that. Because it's true. I got the receipts. So there, Kamala Harris is more qualified than anyone else, any other white presidential candidate out there right now. And and maybe even in the future. But as a black woman behind a legend who's older, she, as a black woman, angry black woman. And if you all don't know this, there is a thing called that. And even for women, Hillary Clinton even said, and Lissa is very close to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton said to me, and this is going into this for Kamala Harris. Hillary Clinton said to me, I said, Mrs. Clinton or Secretary Clinton, I said, why didn't you go after Trump? She was trying to stay above the fray. This was at a time when Donald Trump, we thought everyone was going to think he's crazy. But she wanted to stay above the fray. And she said, but I also know if I would have gone after him, what people would have said. Women are held at a different standard than a man. A black woman is held at a different standard than a man. Shirley Chisholm said, the first black woman to run for president in 1972 said, being black and a woman is a double whammy. You have seen it in Kamala Harris and how she's had to run. Now, there's some in that White House. Well, they're no longer there, and you may know who I'm talking about.
This is what I thought you were going to say before. Okay.
I'm going. I got you.
Okay. All right.
There's some who were there in the White House who were not necessarily pleased with her being there because they remember the little riff at the debate about busing. And they didn't make it easy for her because that person was throwing out all the stuff out of the White House about Kamala Harris. Remember all those things that you were hearing in the news? Yeah, and the person who did it is no longer there. So even being...
names.
Now, I'm telling the story, but well,
you don't have to do that.
Well, no, but I'm gonna do that for my book, though.
Okay.
But oh, child, and the crazy thing is, she wasn't the only black woman that she went after. Think about this. I don't care what you think about Karine Jean-Pierre. The way they treat her and disrespect her in that room, it is god awful. The first black queer woman, migrant woman, to stand at that podium. They didn't do that to Sean Spicer.
You should have, yeah.
Thank you. It's different this is a white male dominated industry, politics. And to rise and not be considered an angry one. I mean, last night I was kind of concerned. Did you think that, Lisa? Because some point she was getting real strong. I said, please don't go too far. Yeah, because she was tempted. I said, pull back, sister. I said, pull back, because I said, what you don't need is that label of angry black woman. Because at first, when she was out there smiling and hugging people, right after she announced that, Biden said he's going to send her out there to be the next generation to run for president and take his place, she was smiling, and everybody was like, oh, well, she's silly. I said, what do you mean she's silly? I said, no, she's one of the smart. She's very strategic and she's tactical.
Yeah. I do think it's unfortunate that she has to be so smiley and so happy, and he gets to be angry and project. I think it's unfortunate that she has to defy that.
It's unfortunate, but it's this reality.
Yeah.
For any woman. Say it. Listen, say it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's true. If you remember when Trump stalked Hillary in the debate, and she has written about this, like she just wanted to turn around and just punch his lights out, but she couldn't. It was so demeaning, and she had to control herself.
But if
she did
that, what would happen?
No, if she did, what would have happened? And I think we're a little further along, and I think, Kamala has handled this so brilliantly last night and her whole campaign. But can I just say one other quick thought in relation to this? I'd be curious if you guys, and sort of an answer to your question. She came in, she was a first-term senator when she ran for vice president. She is an incredible politician. By the way, I grew up in the Bay Area. I actually grew up about a mile from where she grew up. And she won that DA's race in San Francisco against Democratic king-making royalty, the Hallinan family. For her to take that guy on and win, take some chops. And then she ran for attorney general, and she had a tough primary running for Senate. So she'd been through all that, but she got to the White House, and it's a crappy job. I'm sorry. You never, the White House, the president's people always like nervous about you, and they don't want you to have the limelight, but they want you to, be supportive. And she was in a double, she was there, and I think she lacked a little bit of confidence, and there were these stories about her staff and all that. And then she turned it around. You know why? She lost a race for president, and she's a really smart woman and a tremendous student, and she learned. She learned what she needed to do better. I think that's what you want in a leader. Right, that's what you want. And I think learning and look, Bill Clinton lost races, Barack Obama lost races, all the best politicians lost races. And I think we need to give her huge credit for in 4 years growing exponentially in her skill, confidence, ability, commanding presence. She's kicking it now. And she had to be open-minded to learning, and that's part of the job that comes with being vice president and kind of being dumped on at the beginning.
She's in her own skin right now. She's walking comfortably in her own skin. That's what I see.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to get back to one thing you were saying earlier, which was how did we get here?
Yeah.
Like you got the sense that she was sort of thrust upon us, and I just want to explain that we got here because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were elected in 2020, and they got 81 million votes. Mm-hmm. More votes than any person has ever gotten for any office in the history of the United States of America. She was on that ticket. When people voted for Joe Biden, they voted for Kamala Harris, knowing that if something happened to him, she was to be the next in line. Then when she got in office, as Lissa mentioned, and April mentioned, they kind of sabotaged her. They didn't help her out. They gave her a portfolio that was impossible. Dealing with the border is a very difficult issue. Now Trump is calling her the border czar, which was never her job. She was assigned to look into the root causes of immigration, the Northern Triangle in particular. But they gave her assignments that were difficult. And the vice presidency, as Lissa mentioned, is not a very good job. I think it was John Nance Garner, the former vice president from the 1940s or 50s, who said the vice presidency is worth a warm bucket of spit. I mean, it's not. Your whole job is basically to sit there and wait for the president to die.
Yeah.
And that's not. And no White House wants the vice president to outshine the president, so they have to stay in the shadows until something happens. Now, what happened though is that there was an orchestrated effort in the Democratic Party to push Joe Biden out this summer after his horrible debate performance.
Progressives.
Yes, and there was all kinds of people. I mean, Bill Clinton was not involved with this, but Barack Obama was involved with this. Nancy Pelosi was involved in this. Lots of people in the Democratic Party leadership were involved in pushing Joe Biden out, for better or for worse. And they wanted to have an open primary. They wanted to have an open convention. They wanted to have let's just open it up.
That would have been wrong because Democrats, every time they have an open convention or a brokered or some kind of,
it would have been chaos.
Yeah, it would have been chaos, and Democrats lose when that kind of thing happens.
We had that happen in 1968, the Democratic Convention in Chicago. The whole convention was in chaos. There was protests in the streets, and Hubert Humphrey ended up losing in a big election to Richard Nixon, who ended up being one of the worst presidents in history. And so we didn't want to have to happen again. And Joe Biden knew that once he dropped out, that Republicans, the Democratic establishment was not going to latch on to Kamala Harris. So he dropped out, and then 20, 30 minutes later, he issued a statement endorsing Kamala Harris. And that endorsement is what caused the process to move forward, because he wanted to make sure that she had the momentum. The party rallied behind her. She raised hundreds of millions of dollars overnight. She spoke to hundreds of delegates. In order to win the Democratic nomination, you have to get the 1,980 delegates, essentially. She spoke to hundreds of delegates to win the delegates she needed to win. And she went out and she got endorsements from key leaders. She was literally campaigning. Aside from the fact she also got 14 million votes with Joe Biden, because she was on the ticket this year as well in the primary process. So she didn't just show up. There's this misconception that the Democratic leaders just pushed her out there. And Trump is pushing that because he wants the Democratic Party to be divided. Yes. But the reality is she worked for this. And I think Bakari was saying that Hillary Clinton was the most qualified person to run. I think Kamala Harris may be the most qualified person.
I think Hillary Clinton. Well,
let me tell you why I think Kamala Harris. Yeah. Because she has been involved in state, local, and federal government, She's been involved in the executive, legislative, and judicial branch. There's nobody else who's ever had that kind of experience. Donald Trump came in office with no government experience at all. The first and only president in all American history to have no government and military experience. She comes in, she's been elected at the local level. She's been elected as a DA, elected at the state levels, as a California Attorney General, elected as a United States Senator, and elected as Vice President. And she's also has experience as working in the executive branch, working in the White House, in the legislative branch, working in the Senate, and with the judicial branch because she was working as a prosecutor, working with the judiciary. So she understands government better than practically anybody else who's ever run for president of the United States in our history of our country. The idea that we say she's not qualified is ridiculous. It's all this DEI hire nonsense. It's a slur, and it's designed to smear her because they can't stand the idea of a strong black woman taking on this incompetent white man who's running for president.
And I'm gonna right.
Said that.
And to add on top of that, I do believe that history has allowed us to see. And I'm going to go with Nancy Pelosi more so. Glass is so easy to shatter. I think it's more marble. You know, you've had Shirley Chisholm, and even Hillary Clinton talked about Shirley Chisholm. You had women like Carol Moseley Braun trying to run, Geraldine Ferraro. You've had women who each time did something. And Hillary Clinton really laid the groundwork for this moment because people saw what was done to her and how she was wronged. And they said, once you read that book cover to cover, you said, I've seen it, I know what this is about, and I'm not going to do it again. So here's the next thing, though. What really, now this was, as a news person and as my humanity, and as the author of Black Women Will Save the World and Anthem,
Okay.
I was like, thank you. Hold it up. Yes, thank you. My dear friend, yes, thank you. So what bothered me was I said, this woman is in the line of secession. They said, we don't want anybody. I said, how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
I said, she's called. They left her out of the discussion. And that's what really made everyone mad. Biden said, oh no, because there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that people didn't know. And Biden said, no, I'm going to support you. And that night, when he said, I'm doing this, when he said, I'm walking away for the sake of democracy, and he talked about the Continental Congress and the Declaration of Independence and Benjamin Franklin speaking, and when Benjamin Franklin said, save the republic if you can, this next generation Black woman is here to save the democracy, not just the party, but the democracy. And they didn't want her. And then the next day, honey, Win with Black Women. Oh my God. They were on all night long. And it started from that. Win with Black men. Win with ladies who own cats. Win with white women. Win with white men. Win with the church people. I mean, everybody was winning to fund Kamala Harris, to save the democracy. It's not about Black woman. It's not about personality. They're putting this on her shoulders. Once again, we save everything. Putting it on her shoulders so she can save this democracy. So we have the ability to have freedoms. Because what's coming, Project 2025, he says he's never read it. Trust and believe. They've taken that. That's on steroids, because we saw exactly what that was in the administration. With the loyalty test, just in the HUD and HHS, they lost thousands of people from loyalty tests. They lost that, and they were looking for people. They had big job hires at the beginning of the Biden administration. That was from Donald Trump. He did that then. Imagine what he will do next time. And that's just one piece. LGBTQ, immigration, race, anything you can imagine. Education is gone. And our babies, look, what is it? The miseducation of the Negro. Carter G. Woodson. Yes, thank you. I was going to that. Okay. Yes. We have never been educated. They're going to try to abolish education. I can talk all day, but all of that to say, this Black woman has had an evolution that you are witness to. And come January 20th, if the word is the 3 Ks, 3 Ks. I'm not calling it the other K. Ketanji, Kamala, King, all on January 20th. That's a powerful moment. Now, that's as my humanity as a Black woman, raised in a house that had King and Kennedy on the wall. And if my mother and father were alive, they'd have Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. And then if they were alive, if she became president, they would have her there too. So I hope we gave you a roundabout.
You gave enough. That was great.
Okay, thank you. Are we out of time, or can we take? Okay. The owner says we can do a little bit. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Leo. My question is because you brought up the Palestine, and I know that you mentioned that she has said she showed more humanity, which compared to the previous president, compared with the current president, is definitely a difference. The former president has used Palestinians as a slur, which is is unbelievable. But at the debate, one saw that there is when it comes to Palestinians and the Palestinian issue, it is held to a different standard than when you were talking about Ukraine. Because yes, in Ukraine, she mentioned that there was violation of international laws, and we have to uphold democracy and international law. But then when it comes to Israel and Palestine, yes, we have to. Israel has a right to defend itself, and we're still going to be funding Israel. And yet we're seeing a genocide happening. As of right now, currently there's Palestinians who are dying. We had an American that got killed in the West Bank, and yet we're still not upholding the Leahy law and all these other laws that are supposed to be implemented once humanitarian laws are violated. So how can we, people who want to see this moment in history happen, because she deserves it, and it's about time that we have somebody, a woman in the White House, especially a Black woman. And how can us in the camp that are, some of us may not vote for her at all because of what she's basically saying, that we're still going to be giving funding for war. And so how can we support somebody like that when you're saying that there's a double standard?
I'll say something about this. I understand. I actually, as I was saying before, I'm probably far more progressive than any. I've worked for 6 campaigns, worked for 2 presidents, and I'm probably far more progressive than any person who could ever get elected president in the United States. And I agree with you probably almost 100% on the issue of Palestine. However, I also know that if she said everything you wanted to say, she would not get elected.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality of where we are in our country. And so, I worked for Bill Clinton. One of my biggest issues my entire life is the issue of capital punishment. I've been talking about that for 40 years. I wrote my first article I wrote in 1982 about capital punishment. And I worked for Bill Clinton, who was in favor of capital punishment, even killed someone, Ricky Ray Rector, in order to prove that he was tough on crime. And during a campaign. And I thought it was reprehensible, but I also knew that if he had changed his position and didn't support capital punishment, he would probably lose, because I'd worked for Michael Dukakis before, and Michael Dukakis ran for president in 1988. And he was asked a question at the debate by a CNN anchor, and he said that he still opposed capital punishment. And he lost that election because people thought he was not tough enough on crime. Now, what does this have to do with Palestine? Is that yes, I think we should try to push for all these issues that we're talking about. It's okay to hold Kamala Harris and Joe Biden accountable, but it's also we also have to understand that we have to create the conditions so that this can happen. She can't be out on a limb and try to make herself the sacrificial lamb in order to save Palestine, because she will never be elected president. And that's just a sad reality of where we are as a country. I want Palestine to be free too. I want to have a 2-state solution just as much as she does or anyone else does. I want Israel to be secure as well. But none of this is going to happen if she doesn't get elected president, because Trump doesn't care.
And so, I guess what you're saying is that her and basically all of American politics hold by AIPAC, because we saw 2 congressmen, 2 Black congressmen, Cory Bush and Jamal Bowman, being outspended they lost by AIPAC because they were 2 Blacks who
But let me say this. I've heard the National Security Advisor at the White House say one of the strongest statements on Palestine that I've heard in a long time. And then with Kamala Harris saying what she did. The issue, there's a concern about human dignity and humanity and keeping people safe and feeding them to make sure you're not starving and all that in the midst of war, in the midst of people dying, being held hostage. Two things can mutually exist at the same time. Wanting to help and trying to ensure that food is going and ensure that safety is happening, but also at the same time trying to deal with what's happening with Hamas and Israel and to bring the hostages home. And unfortunately, there are people who are dead, from in Palestine and in Israel and Americans. I don't think there's a silver bullet. I'm saying this as a journalist. This is a very, very complicated situation that is not just today. This has been going on for a very long time. And if it's gone on that long, do you think you can solve it like that? No.
Well, plus, I don't think Bibi Netanyahu wants to solve the problem.
No, he doesn't.
Donald
He
Trump.
doesn't.
They want this to be a thorn in Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's side throughout the election. I don't think there will be any ceasefire until after the election, to be honest.
I mean, and
we're gonna have to go next. But
no. I mean, but I guess just to add up to, because you mentioned that, because Ronald Reagan, he definitely with a phone call, he put a pressure on the prime minister during the war in Lebanon. So there is that possibility that with just a phone call, you can put pressure on it.
It's not just a phone call. It's deeper than that.
Who was the Israeli prime minister at that time, though? It wasn't Netanyahu. I mean, we're dealing with a whole different person. Right now. Yeah, Bibi Netanyahu, he's indicted just like Donald Trump is. He's a nationalist just like Trump is. He's a Israeli Trump.
Hasn't he been impeached too?
He hasn't been impeached.
Not impeached, but they were trying. Yeah,
he's been indicted. Yeah. So
yes,
let's go back
thank
here.
you.
Yeah.
You're in line, aren't you?
Oh, she was in line too.
Oh, wait, are you still have questions?
Yeah.
Come on up. We're gonna yeah.
Mine is real quick. Mine is lightweight compared to everything else we were talking about today.
Oh, good. Okay.
Politicians speak. That's what I call it. You ask them a direct question. The answer is either yes or no. And I'm going to qualify. There's more. Or you say, do you want watermelon or peaches? And you get all this. You know what I'm talking about. They just talk and talk and talk. And it's like, I get the explanation as to why. Now, I do understand to play this game, you have to watch your words and what you say yes or no to.
Words matter.
But sometimes, just sometimes, I want them to say, yes, this is it, and blah, 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 as opposed to blah, 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 blah. And then I'm thinking, was that a yes or no? Just simple stuff.
So let me tell you, last night I said, I got to Donald Trump and I said, Mr. President, what do you think Black America saw tonight? He said to me, I love Black America. I love Black America. And they love me too. That wasn't the question. And then I asked, what are the numbers for Black men supporting you? He never answered. So I get what you're saying.
I'm not talking about him because I know he goes all
I know,
over
but I'm just saying that was an example. But you have to remember, sometimes politicians understand that if they say one thing, it hurts another community. And then they don't get that vote. So they play this word salad game. They'll tell you in private, but and they won't tell you on the camera because they're held to that on the record. So there is it could be a political albatross around their neck if they truly answer. I mean, sometimes I get frustrated in the briefing room. I'm like, I get it. I'm with you. We want just a direct answer sometimes. But a lot of times when you're watching TV and watching the news and watching the briefing, you're not going to get that straight answer. You get it from the stories that we go behind the scenes and ask a lot of times.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hello.
it's a lot
And
of
this is
pressure
the
being
last
the
question,
one. Oh my
yes.
goodness. Thank you both for being here and thank you for hosting the event. My name is Tiara and I am the daughter of parents who attended segregated schools in North Carolina. And I always thought that when it was my time that I would get out and march and mobilize. And then Black Lives Matter happened in 2020. And I think it was a really unique time that we were all at home. We didn't have anything else to do. And it was really easy for us to get out. But when you all talked about how easy it is to mobilize on the phones, I wonder if you all are ever concerned about the attention span of the American public now, especially our generation, millennials and younger, just about the attention span and our capability to play the long game. You know, we always hear Republicans talk about they've played this long game, especially with Roe v. Wade, and that Democrats.
Oh, they played that for 50 years.
Yeah, and that
They made
Democrats
that
don't
work,
have the
yeah.
kind of that same foreview, I guess. And so, just curious as your thoughts about the attention span, if social media really kind of hurts that, our ability to latch onto something and really stick with it. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's a really good question to end with. And yes, I do think the attention span is an issue. I don't think it's just about the young the youth and what is it, Gen Z or anything like that right now. It's an issue, I think, because many of us who are on the quote unquote left are very idealistic. We want things to change. We want the world to get better, and we're tired of waiting for that. And so I can understand the frustration when you vote for somebody, you expect some sort of immediate reaction, and you don't get it. And then what the other side does is they weaponize that dissatisfaction because you're not able to accomplish it because there's so many structural impediments to prevent that. And they go to, for example, black people and say, well, look, you've been voting for Democrats forever and they haven't given you everything you wanted. So you should leave the Democratic plantation, you know, that rhetoric that they say.
That plantation part, yeah.
And, you know, it's designed to frustrate us, but we have to, you know, keep our eyes on the prize, as Dr. King would say, or Julian Bond would say. And so I just think it's a great question. It's important to remember that. I just want to finish, though, by making one last acknowledgement, which is I see that there are two people in the front here who have these T-shirts on. It's amazing. Frankie Beverly. So
Happy feelings.
I want to
Amen.
say, give a shout out to Frankie Beverly and his family and everyone who passed away. Frankie Beverly was, of course, a staple in African American communities, and one of our favorite songs at the family reunion was always "Before I Let Go."
Before I let go, yes. Do a little lot. Okay, look at come on, the bounce. We got the bop. All right. No, we've lost icons. Frankie Beverly,
James Earl Jones.
Oh my gosh, the voice. And I don't know. I'm not Sergio Mendes, but I'm gonna tell you, I don't know what I'm going to do without Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Ooh, yeah. She would call me, April, I need you to do this. I'm like, yes, what do you need? She was something. But and Frankie Beverly, but he gave us decades of music. And it was like a cult following for him, He was a life and a light. And with that said, thank you for
Thank you all for
up.
coming. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Lissa. Thank you, April.
Thank you, Lissa. And thank you, Bakari, wherever you are in your ubiquitously clandestine place. So books are for sale. Yes, and the Jer candles. Who has candles? Yes. Do you like your candles? All right. We've got them here at Politics and Prose. 55 days. Go vote. Go vote. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And this is yet another Race in America panel series. Thank you, Politics and Prose. Lissa says we'll be back. We'll be back. Thank you.